The hero's journey, it's like a template. It's like a way that we write stories, movies, books, TV shows. It's just a simple way for us to follow simple steps that lead to an excellent story. We take the main character and put him through some sort of trial, test, maybe some sort of mission or an adventure. And usually they end up defeating the antagonist, the main monster, beating some sort of obstacle. I'm going to be talking about Star Wars, specifically Episode 4, because I feel like it's a really good example of the hero's journey, and who doesn't like a good Star Wars movie? We see the main character, Luke Skywalker. We see him just being on Tatooine, and he's working for his aunt and uncle, and he doesn't really know what to do. He's constantly, standing in the middle of nowhere by his house looking at the double suns, right? This is called status quo. This is the first step of the hero's journey. And in status quo, what we're going to see is we're going to just sort of figure out what the character is. And with Luke Skywalker, we're going to figure out what he's like and where he's living, which he's living on Tatooine. And we're just going to figure out a lot of things about this story. So there we have it. Status quo. Luke Skywalker working for his family, living on Tatooine, not really knowing what to do. So, step 2. It's call to adventure. We see R2-D2. He gets introduced in this part of the story. Luke Skywalker is going to try and find a new droid for his uncle to work, and he finds R2-D2. He buys him, and we find out that R2-D2 has a special message for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it's from Princess Leia asking for help. It has to do with different things like trying to go to the planet Alderaan and talking about how he fought in the original Clone Wars, and of course the infamous line, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope." So this is the call to adventure, you see, because it's not the call to adventure for Obi-Wan, it's the call to adventure for Luke Skywalker, because Obi-Wan says, "Oh, you must come with me." And Luke Skywalker is like, I don't want to come with you, I don't want to have to deal with all the things happening in the Empire, I just want to stay here and work with my family. But Obi-Wan says, if you want to come with me, you're going to have to figure out the ways of the Force. You're going to have to figure out how to become a true Jedi Master. And by doing that, you have to learn how to use the Force, and you need to learn how to properly wield a lightsaber. And those are no easy tasks. He has to be taught these things, and that's where Obi-Wan Kenobi is very important in this story, because he's like a mentor, right? A mentor is someone that helps the main character with some sort of special ability or talent, and he teaches them, and he literally mentors Luke Skywalker, right? So Obi-Wan Kenobi is a perfect example of this, because he's literally teaching him how to fill in the blank. So wield a lightsaber, or use the Force, or whatever. He's teaching him how to do that. And that's the key part of the story. So next, we move on to the third step. So, status quo, call to adventure. The third step, it's departure. Now, in Star Wars, the departure step is a little different, and oftentimes I've seen a lot of different websites talk about the third step of the hero's journey as sort of a decline to the call to the adventure. So, that happens in Star Wars, especially Episode 4. Luke Skywalker literally declines Obi-Wan Kenobi's request to go to Alderaan. He declines the call to adventure. But departure is where he leaves his familiar home to go on this so-called mission, this adventure, right? In departure, we see that originally Luke Skywalker didn't want to go with Obi-Wan Kenobi to Alderaan. He said, I don't have time for that. I have to help my family work. I have to, be there for my family. I can't just waste my time going on trying to kill the Empire and do whatever, right? Well, we see in the story he's working. And there's at one point in the story when all of a sudden he finds out that his house is being attacked by stormtroopers. They're looking for the droids, especially R2-D2. Because remember, he has crucial information. Remember the, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope." R2-D2 was that droid that had that message on it. So it was important that the stormtroopers found it and made sure that the Jedi or anybody offending them would not use it to their advantage. We see in the story that Luke comes home and everything is burnt to a crisp. His family is gone, his house is gone, the droids are gone, and everything he ever knew and loved was literally burnt. So this was kind of a kick in the butt for Luke to say, maybe you should go to Alderaan with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Maybe you should start on this adventure. So, step number 3, departure. He has nothing to lose, and he ends up just going with Obi-Wan Kenobi to Alderaan after this crazy mishap of his house being completely destroyed. The number 4 step is trials. Now in this movie, I wouldn't necessarily say that the trials are bad. I'll say the trials are good. Alright, I've also seen a lot of different places call this fourth step not just trials, but also trials and allies. And this is true in this Star Wars episode because in this step, Luke Skywalker meets Han Solo and Chewbacca, two very crucial characters in the story, and they take them from Tatooine, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke. They take Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke from Tatooine and send them to Alderaan and, the Millennium Falcon, right? They're very crucial parts of the story. They are allies to Luke Skywalker, and they literally show up in most of the, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and everything, all those episodes, right? They are very important allies to most Star Wars stories, alright? We see that the main trial in this section isn't necessarily bad. Like I said earlier, it's good, because this is when Luke Skywalker actually starts his training. This is the point when Luke Skywalker actually figures out, what does it really take to become a true Jedi Master, so to speak. And if you remember any parts of the movie, you'll remember that there's this sort of like droid thing that's like flying around kind of around Luke Skywalker. And Luke Skywalker is blindfolded, right? And he has to kind of deflect these these laser shots coming at him. He has to, he's blindfolded. He has to use the Force in order to figure out where these lasers are coming from and how he needs to defend from them. This is a big trial for him because it's not necessarily a trial that he's maybe gonna possibly lose his life or a big risk. Rather, it's a trial for him to learn and try to become a true Jedi Master. So, we've gone over four, right? 4 steps. The first one, status quo. We see Luke Skywalker just living on Tatooine. The second one is call to adventure. This is where, Obi-Wan Kenobi asks him to go to Alderaan. The third step is departure. This is where Luke Skywalker's house gets burned and the droids are gone, his family's gone, and he decides to just, risk it and go with Obi-Wan Kenobi. And step number 4 is trials. This is where he meets Han Solo and Chewbacca, and this is also where he starts his training to become a real, true Jedi Master. So now, let's move on to number 5, the approach. So, we've gone over the first 4 steps of the hero's journey. Status quo, call to adventure, departure, and trials. Now we sort of step into the second half of the hero's journey. This is where things get a little bit more interesting. This is where the juicy stuff starts happening. The climax of the story occurs in this part. So I left off in number 5, and that was approach. In the approach, we see everybody piling into the Millennium Falcon, and they're about to head to Alderaan to try and give the plans to the Death Star to the rebels so that they can help, figure out a way to destroy the Death Star. Along their way, they find out that Alderaan was actually destroyed now. They went to where it was supposed to be, and nothing was there. So they decided to just head back, when all of a sudden they got caught in a tractor beam by the Death Star, which is the one thing they were trying to destroy. So, number 6 is crisis. Now, in this movie it's kind of weird because from what I understand there was like 2 sort of crisis points in the story. The first one we'll talk about now. The second one happens after step 7, which is treasure. So I will get to that in a minute. But right now, number 6, crisis. First of all, we see Obi-Wan Kenobi. They're caught in the tractor beam. They're trying to escape from the Death Star, and their main goal right now is to get out. They have to escape. And so Obi-Wan Kenobi makes the decision to try and go onto the Death Star and turn it off. Meanwhile, they're walking around, they find Princess Leia kind of trapped in the Death Star, so they help her escape, and they're fighting out a bunch of stormtroopers when all of a sudden they see Obi-Wan Kenobi looking straight at Darth Vader. They battle it out, and unfortunately, Darth Vader wins and kills Obi-Wan Kenobi. Right in front of Luke Skywalker also. Because of this, Luke Skywalker makes it a mission for him to avenge his fallen mentor. So they're able to escape in the Millennium Falcon. So that leads us to step number 7, that's treasure. Like I said, they have Princess Leia, which they kind of have been looking for since Alderaan was destroyed. And they also have the plans to the Death Star because they have R2-D2, and they're getting ready to go to Yavin 4, which is the planet that the Rebellion military base is located. This is a treasure because with the plans, it's gonna give them really crucial information to figure out a way to, get the upper hand in a fight to destroy the Death Star, which in turn will destroy the Galactic Empire. So that leads us to number 8, resolve. This is sort of where that second crisis comes in, and the result of the second crisis is really what's defined in this step. So, since there wasn't really a place for the second crisis, I'm gonna explain it now. And that's pretty much, they have the plans to the Death Star. They figure out that it has one major weakness in its exhaust port. and they figure out if they can get a laser from an X-Wing inside of that little port, the whole thing will literally explode. And so they come up with a plan to have a bunch of people in X-Wings flying all over the place trying to fend off the TIE fighters and get to that one super tiny little gap area that leads up to it, shoot some laser bolts inside and blow the whole thing up. They're preparing to fight the Death Star. While they're fighting, the whole war breaks out. I mean, like, seriously. While they're doing this and they're getting ready to attack the Death Star, the Empire strikes back. Like that. The Empire strikes back and they start making a literal war. They've got TIE fighters everywhere and it's literally chaos. Random X-Wings are getting shot down and exploding and people are dying and it's really bad. And it is very desperate. This is the hero's most desperate hour. Because after a few tries, Luke Skywalker realizes that he can get in his own X-Wing and go to that small little gap area where the exhaust port is and shoot some lasers inside. He tries multiple times, but eventually he looks to the Force and uses it to get that perfect aim and shoot right into the exhaust port, and the whole thing explodes. So, the Death Star it's gone, it's dead, and the Rebellion has won the fight against the Galactic Empire. So now that the main conflict is over, we go to number 9, and that's Return. So, pretty much it's a very simple step. Everybody that survived returned to the planet of Yavin 4 to kind of celebrate their victory. It's a war, they won, they have the right to celebrate, and so everybody goes back to the planet and celebrates. Number 10 is New Life. So this one, we're gonna look at Luke Skywalker. He literally has had his life changed in the basis of this movie. He went from living on Tatooine as a simple farm boy to now he's fighting in the Rebellion, and now he's like a Jedi in training. His life has been completely changed. After this whole war, we see that Luke Skywalker goes on to help with the Rebellion and fighting the Galactic Empire because they do unfortunately build a second Death Star. And he starts to learn more with the Force. We see in the future movies, Yoda comes into play, and he's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi Jr. of sense, because he is literally another huge mentor. He teaches Luke Skywalker a ton of things about the Force and how to use it properly and everything. He's a very big character in the stories. So, we are down to the last 2 steps, alright? Resolution and status quo again. Number 11 is resolution. This is sort of like the end of the story, and this is where we see that sort of scene when, Chewie, Han Solo, and Leia and Luke Skywalker are all kind of getting medals for their actions that they did during the battle, and, everybody's celebrating them on the planet, and everything is super happy, and that's really the end of the movie, is, all the somewhat main characters are being celebrated for their actions, and, the movie ends. So the last step is number 12, that's status quo. This one's a little tricky because if you remember, Tatooine, his family has been burnt. His house has been burnt. His old job is like, he can't do it anymore because he has no family and no one to go to anymore. His new life is pretty much just helping out the Rebellion, fighting whenever they need help, or just, he really doesn't have like his old way of life. He doesn't return to what he used to do. He doesn't do that. Instead, he's helping out the Rebellion, and he's, helping them out when they need battles, and he's, training to become a Jedi Master. And since I'm focusing on only Episode 4, we can't really use the excuse that, oh, Yoda is training him, and now he's, trying to learn how to be a true Jedi Master, which is true, but really in this movie, the status quo kind of ends with a mystery, because at the very end of the movie, it kind of ends at step 11. Everybody's just kind of celebrating and, giving them awards, and that's kind of the end of the movie. There's not really anything we know about the end of Episode 4 as far as Luke Skywalker's life after the whole journey, but as far as I'm concerned, he's probably just, chilling at Yavin 4, helping out the Rebellion with anything they need help with. So, the hero's journey. We've looked at it with Star Wars, and we can see it applies pretty well. Although there are some weird, differences with the steps and how the movie plays out. For the most part, it's an excellent example of how the hero's journey is applied and used in so many stories. Movies and books and TV shows, anything that really has a plot set in place, you're most likely going to find the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell created the hero's journey. It's a 12-step process, all the way from status quo to back to status quo. It's an excellent way to write very immersive storyline. It's all over the place. I mean, there are so many stories, movies, TV shows, books, and plots of all types that use the hero's journey's 12-step method to be able to create a really interesting story. If it weren't for Joseph Campbell creating this, most of the stories we know and love just wouldn't be the same today.